Hey guys, how's it going? And happy Friday. I hope you all are doing good. Well, it's been a tough week for the Second Amendment. I'm sure you've all heard by now that the ATF and Attorney General Pam Bondi have scored a huge Supreme Court victory against the Second Amendment and against what they call the so-called ghost guns, which is really just privately made firearms, which were lawful before the United States was a country. And if it wasn't for privately made firearms, we probably wouldn't be the United States of America today. Now, look, I'm not a lawyer. I'm not a Second Amendment lawyer. You guys have probably watched all of their videos already. However, I am going to go over the Bondi v. Vanderstock case a little bit tonight. And yeah, I don't have big lawyerly opinions, and I don't understand every single way all of the court procedure works and all of these big words. However, I do understand one thing. In a country called the United States of America, we have a constitution, and the constitution is the supreme law of the land. It literally says so itself. Now, shortly after the constitution was ratified, 1788, a year later, the founding fathers wrote another beautiful document. It's called the Bill of Rights, written in 1789, ratified as part of the supreme law of the land in 1791. Now, those first 10 amendments, the Bill of Rights, are a part of the Constitution. And since the Constitution is the supreme law of the land, I do understand one thing. And here's the crazy part. You have to have all these law degrees, and you have to get up there in front of people that up above that look down on you. We're wearing black robes. And you have to have all of these fancy law degrees, supposedly from all these places, to understand. But here's the crazy part. A fourth grader or a fifth grader can understand what the Constitution says, can understand what the Declaration of Independence says, and can certainly understand the Second Amendment because it's so crystal clear. Look, we shouldn't even have to have a two-way Edu channel. There should be no court cases because in the United States of America, it should be impossible for any gun control law to exist. It should be impossible for the ATF to exist, because a well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms, it shall not be infringed. And there is no comma or but or whatever after shall not be infringed. No, shall not be infringed, period. 7-2 Supreme Court decision. Huge victory. It's called Bondi versus Vanderstock. Huge victory for the ATF. Huge victory for the gun grabbers. You should see them crowing about it right now. And a huge infringement on your natural, God-given right to keep and bear arms, because the Second Amendment doesn't grant you your right to keep and bear arms. No. These are certain unalienable rights that are endowed by our Creator. That's what the Declaration of Independence says. And that's a beautiful thing. And the Founding Fathers actually realized that. The Second Amendment says, don't tread on me. It tells the government no hands on our arms whatsoever. But instead, we're going to hear, now on its face, they're going to say, well, the Vanderstock case has nothing to do with the Second Amendment. And you know what? I actually don't agree with that at all, because it kind of doesn't. It's about the APA, the Administrative Procedures Act. It's about a facial argument. You know, they said we got rid of the Chevron doctrine or the Chevron deference. We're still under the Salerno deference. I'll tell you guys what that is as the stream goes on tonight. But look, here's what it basically comes down to. If you look at very early Supreme Court, very, very early, 1803 actually, that was a good year. It's called Marbury v. Madison, and it says that all laws that are repugnant to the Constitution, those are void. And while on its face, the so-called Vanderstock case, it's Bondi v. Vanderstock, that's the official name of the case. Attorney General Pam Bondi versus Vanderstock versus privately made firearms, just to put this all into perspective. They cite the Gun Control Act of 1968 a lot, don't they? Well, yeah. And they talk about, well, we're bound by what this law says, and this is how it has to be interpreted by this Salerno versus Chevron deference. Oh, wait a minute. Did I say Chevron? Oh, yeah. You can't even make this stuff up. Chevron deference is now over. Oh no, that was the United States Department of Natural Resources against Chevron. That deference supposedly is over now. No, now we're under the Salerno v. Chevron. And that's the current thing that rules these people. Now, let me know in the live chat tonight as we talk about this. And shout out to the replay crew, by the way. All of you guys who watch over the weekend or throughout the next week. But, yeah, let me know what you think. Why is it the Supreme Court, which is supposed to be interpreting rather laws, or in this case, ATF rules are constitutional, why do they always have to defer back to previous Supreme Court precedent? The Chevron deference, the Salerno deference, the this and the that. And then they refer back to the Gun Control Act of 1968. Why can't any of these people read the damn Constitution? Why can't any of them look at the Second Amendment and refer back to that? Apparently, that's such a simple question that an uneducated person without a law degree like myself couldn't understand. Or maybe, these preposterous arguments, because these arguments were preposterous, pretty dumb, in the majority opinion, 7-2 Supreme Court decision against the Second Amendment, against privately made firearms. Maybe this stuff's just so preposterous it requires the listener to be dumber than the speaker. Another way to word that is, who was smarter, the founding fathers of this country, who wrote in the supreme law of the land, shall not be infringed, or all these people now that write a bunch of gobbledygook, 63 pages long, referring back to, well, this Supreme Court precedents, this law, that law, this deference, that deference. These are the rules of the court. Yeah. When you can just simply read what the founding fathers ratified in 1791, and it's pretty darn clear, actually. So we're going to get into that tonight. And I did pick some excerpts that I do want to talk about with this case. I'm also going to have a friend of mine named Steven. His YouTube channel is at 2A Law, by the way, just the @ 2A Law. You should be able to find him on YouTube. He's going to be my special guest this coming up Wednesday. We're going to do like a 6 p.m. stream, and he's a Second Amendment lawyer that's taken part in and won a lot of big Second Amendment cases. So I want to talk to him about some of this stuff as well. So hopefully you guys set your little reminders. Make sure the notifications are turned on for the channel, because I'm going to have somebody who can offer his perspective and is really smart. And even though he's a lawyer and he understands a little bit more of this gobbledygook than people like me do, we've been talking quite a bit on the phone lately, and he actually does agree with what I'm saying too, though, that, look, shall not be infringed. We shouldn't even be having to talk about this at all. So if you want that perspective, make sure you're subscribed to the channel. If you're not, notifications are turned on, and we have it scheduled for this Wednesday, which I believe is April 2nd. Wednesday, April 2nd. Yep, coming up here at 6 p.m. I'll have that posted in the next day or two for you to look at that. Also, for all of you who live in Michigan, anyone live in Michigan out there? The governor of Michigan, does anyone remember before the elections? The governor of Michigan, she'd like to offer you communion. Ugh, that was really freaky. Anyone that didn't see that, just look it up. You wish you could unsee it, because, look, these are not good people. These are not good-looking people, not on the inside or out, but she'd like to offer you communion. Do you remember that? I know you remember that, Pillbox Bunker. What's happening, Pillbox? Nice to see you, man. Pillbox Bunker knows what I'm talking about. Some of you guys do, too. But look, she wants to take hunting and fishing in Michigan, and boating, too, by the way. Do you remember that? Back in 2020, the plague, the whatever. Dude, they called it so many things I can't even remember. Some people even called it the Kung Flu. Yeah. Everyone, you couldn't go out on a motorboat. You could just go out on a rowboat, right? Except for her husband. He was up there power boating and water skiing and doing all this. Now she's going after boating. I mean, you can't even make this stuff up. So we'll get into that too, about the governor of Michigan. And it's not just a little bit too. The Flugaloo. What's up, Midwest Logger? Wow, there's some good people in the chat tonight. And I will check up on all the chat replay throughout the weekend, which I always do. And since there's so many good people always hanging out here, that's why I'm back yet again. So, yeah, let's see here. We should probably get into the Bondi v. Vanderstock case first, and then I'll get into the Michigan stuff. I'll probably do a shorter standalone video, by the way, about this later. I'm not going to do a standalone about the Michigan hunting and fishing licenses. I'll do a shorter video. But look, I'm probably not going to do a shorter video on the ghost gun Supreme Court ruling. I'm using air quotes because that's what they call it, but it's really just called privately made firearms. But I'm not going to do a short video on that, but I am going to do a discussion with a 2A lawyer friend of mine next Wednesday. And for all of you watching on replay, shout out. For those of you that look, maybe your intellect is down as low as the 7 of the Supreme Court justices and you just can't read or understand. It says that this was streamed live. So, hey, for everyone that's like, dude, get to the point. How come he couldn't get into the whole Supreme Court case and get into all of the hunting and fishing fees that Whitmer's trying to do in 7 minutes? Oh, I could if I wanted to, actually. That's the crazy part. I could. And I probably will do a short video, but I actually don't want to. This is a live stream. So if you can't handle that and you don't like watching live stream replays, turn off. If you still can't handle yourself, just unsub and go pout somewhere else, because here's the thing, man. We have major Supreme Court losses right now. On the United States level, the governor of Michigan's literally getting ready to try to completely destroy hunting and fishing in the Great Lakes state. I don't really have time for whiny little low aptitude viewers, actually. So you all can just not watch ever again if you just can't comprehend that this is my Friday live stream and you're watching. But one more time, I sincerely do appreciate all of you that do understand that and love to hang out live, and all of you who look forward to watching the replays, because I watch tons of 2-hour live stream replays. So we're going to get into all of that. But before we do, thanks for all of the many ways all of you help support the channel. This is a viewer-funded channel. You didn't hear me doing any ad reads whatsoever. So the amount you guys chip in is what keeps it going. So thank you to all the YouTube channel members, where you guys have access to some extra content. I do post bonus content. You get some unique emojis, and you do get the little insignia behind your name, which I definitely see some people in the chat right now that are channel members. So shout out to all of you. Thank you to my Patreon supporters as well as my local supporters. Now, locals is a different site, censorship free. You can join there totally free, actually, or you can support for more perks. And again, to be a financial sponsor of the channel. We do a bonus live stream there and on their sister site that rhymes with Fumble every Saturday night. We touch guns live. I've been getting into some really cool guns on there because we can do that there where the rules would prohibit that. You know what I'm saying? On YouTube. So make sure you guys are checking me out on those censorship-free platforms, as well as check me out on X, as well as Myriad Social. So there you guys go. Check all the links down there in the description. And we are going to get into this. And no, Jane, I'm not fronting the trolls. It's just people that 2A Edu, you get to the no. This is a live stream. I'm gonna hang out with my friends tonight. You know what I mean? That's what these are. Look, I told you guys this a long time ago, and this is the deal. I wish we could all just gather around the same campfire. That would be really fun, actually. I wish we could just kind of, sit outside the shop, or I say outside because it's finally warm enough to go outside today. That's awesome. Great weather today, besides the rain, but hey, it was 70 degrees, so I'll take it. I wish we could all go for a hike in the woods, but we're all over the place, and it's just, I guess, impossible to do that. So this is the best we have, and I like hanging out with all of you. And I know a lot of you do too. It's just funny because there's so many whiners lately. People whine and they whine, and I'm like, you know what, though? I mean, geez, Pete's, man. They'll figure it out eventually. Oh, geez, Mateo says I'm killing his ability. No, look, most of the people know who they are. They're either one of those type or they're not. But 99.9% of everybody, actually, it's literally everybody that watches this channel is awesome. And I really don't have problems with trolls at all. I'm going to read a couple quick super chats that came in right away. So thank you. Thank you for you guys helping to sponsor the show for this week. We have Robin Sage with a generous super chat. Thank you. I appreciate it. And simply says, thanks for all you do. Well, you're welcome. And I appreciate you and hope you enjoy the stream tonight. We have John Q. Public, channel member and a super chat. Well, thank you, John Q. Public. Do you plan on covering the executive order concerning the DOJ and the U.S. AG Pam Bondi going after states that infringe on Second Amendment rights? I'm going to mention the executive order tonight that she was supposed to act on. She's like 3 weeks late. You know what I mean? We're going to talk about that in just a little bit. So I'm going to go over that. And, well, yeah, we'll see. So if you guys remember, under the former Vice President Biden, all right? We used to call him the current former Vice President. Let's go, Brandon. That one? Yeah. Look, this is a terrible person, terrible president, rabidly anti-2A. Made an executive order directing the ATF to come up with a rule to ban ghost guns, so-called. Privately made firearms, right? In many aspects, they're called kits. They're called build, buy, shoot kit, and many things by P80 and other places like that. But you guys remember that. We reported on this channel when it happened. And we also reported when the district judge out of the Fifth Circuit, I believe that one was Reed O'Connor. He's actually set aside a lot of rules. I believe that was Reed O'Connor. I'm not 100%. Basically said, no, actually, this rule is not legit. It violates the Administrative Procedures Act, and it's halted. Well, the government appealed. At that time, it was Garland v. Vanderstock. Vanderstock's the plaintiff that came in suing the government, right? And so then they came in and said, well, let's take it up to the Fifth U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals. Fifth Circuit agreed with the lower judge and said, yeah, this rule's a no-go. And the rule was set aside for a long period of time while the government kept going. All right, as we had the changeover from Biden to Trump, and now the changeover from Garland to Bondi. That's why it's called Bondi v. Vanderstock. Okay, so this is currently now the Bondi case, but you may remember it as the Garland v. Vanderstock case. Well, they came in and said, yeah, so went all the way up to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court just overturned the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals. All right. And they also overturned the lower judge, the district judge, and it's been remanded back for them to redecide the case with the orders from the Supreme Court. So, yeah. And yeah, man, no, to be fair, Zeno, if they don't have the time, then that's fine. See, look, if people don't have the time to watch the stream, they just don't watch. It's when they whine. You know what I mean? Trust me. I'm very careful with my words. I have the best words, and I was very, very articulate. Notice I never, ever, ever scolded people that just don't have the time to watch. Dude, if you don't have the time to watch, just move on. It's just when people, you know what I mean? Yeah, I don't know. You should know what I mean because I was crystal clear earlier. So, yeah, I see what you're saying, but actually I don't really either. So, whatever. It's all good. So, the Supreme Court came back and said, no, actually, this rule from Biden is legit. Now, this was a 7-2 ruling. Now, you've got your three so-called liberal justices, right? You've got 3 of them. One of them they even call, gosh, they have so many names for this people. I can't even remember any of them. But do you remember that Supreme Court justice when she was getting affirmed by the U.S. Senate? She was asked a very simple question. This was from Marsha Blackburn, the senator from Tennessee. And they said, what's a woman? And she said, I don't know what a woman is. Nobody could possibly know. I'm not a biologist. I don't have a degree in anatomy and physiology. Do you remember her? Well, she couldn't answer it. It was too tough of a question. She said, I don't know. Nobody knows. Nobody knows what's a woman. You could never know. It's not even possible. I'm like, dude, it's like an adult female person. Like, it takes you, like, you just know it, right? Boys have a penis. Girls have a vagina. That was in, like, everybody knows that too. And it was even in a movie for people who, like, only get their education from movies. But anyways, she's on the court now. They call her many things. I think the way you pronounce her name might be Jumanji. I think so. Of course, she voted that the Biden ban was okay. The Biden era ATF ban was okay. Of course. No, you've got some other ones where it's like, you ever heard of this Sotomayor? I mean, you've got some liberals on the court. And then you've got Chief Justice Roberts. so-called conservative justice, but come on now. He literally goes over with the left side of the court pretty often. You've got Elena Kagan, right? So you've got Jumanji, you've got Sotomayor, you've got Kagan. Those are the liberals, and it's supposedly the Supreme Court has a 6-3 majority of conservatives. But then you've got Roberts, and he's the one that like says he was just calling balls and strikes when he upheld like certain illegal provisions of Obamacare at that time. They've since rescinded some of them. You can keep going on and on, right? But then you've got the so-called conservative justices. So you've got the 3 Trump appointees. You've got Neil Gorsuch. You've got Brett Kavanaugh. And you have Amy Coney Barrett. Well, all 3 of them and Roberts went over with the so-called liberals. And that's why we had 7 justices agree with Bondi and the ATF. And then we had 2 dissents. Justice Clarence Thomas and Justice Samuel Alito. Well, it appears now, see, here's the crazy part, and tell me what you all think, because, look, I go to Lansing all the time to try to advocate on the legislative level to try to stop gun control laws from going through, because I've always believed that preventing a law from going through, that's the best way to do it, no questions asked. I think most of you would agree with that, right? And then the second best way to get it overturned is to vote in a new legislature. Like in Michigan, the Republicans took back control of the House. The Democrats still hold a very narrow, now 1-seat majority in the Senate. It used to be 2. Now it's only a 1-seat majority in the Senate right now. Just keep that in mind. It's essentially almost tied, but the Dems barely have the Senate. And then you go in there and try to get stuff repealed. That's why I've had Michigan Representative Jim DeSena with his red flag law repeal package on this channel recently. And I'm actually going to go down to, if I can, go down to a town hall down in Flat Rock, Michigan, where there's going to be 3 reps there. You're going to have my favorite Michigan representative, Jamie Thompson, and then Representatives Riley Linton and Jim DeSena. It's over the Flat Rock Dam, but I think I'm going to go there and kind of like crash the party and ask them some stuff about the Second Amendment and those bills. So anyways, I've always thought the best way is to stop it at the legislative level. Don't let these unconstitutional gun control laws go through, because, yeah, an ounce of prevention can stop like a pound of cure. Now, what I've noticed, though, and this is where I want to ask a lot of you just to kind of chime in, whether in the live chat, which if I can't read it right now in real time, I do read it all later, and it'll help me understand, or in the comment section if you're watching on replay, is a lot of people in the 2A community, and I get a lot of comments about this, and I read them other places as well as on my own channel. They say, oh, no sweat, we'll just sue and it'll get overturned in court. It almost seems like a lot of people's first gut instinct is, don't sweat it, we'll sue and we'll win, because, well, look, the Supreme Court's so-called conservative and everything will work out in the end. And it's kind of like, and I'm not seeing any of you watching, just tell me like why you think people are this way is what I'm asking. Or what's your order of priority is. Do you try to stop this stuff before it happens at the legislative level, or is it no big deal, just sue and everything will work out? Because so many people every time they're like, well, this is unconstitutional. Who's filing the lawsuit? When are we going to sue? It's going to be turned over. And yeah, that's wishful thinking, but this is just like a stark example of why it doesn't always work this way. So I'll give you a real quick Michigan. I'm just going to digress for a second, then we're going to get right back into this Vanderstock case. So in Michigan, the Supreme Court went even more liberal, okay, way more liberal than it was before, and it was already a liberal court. Basically, every justice in the Michigan Supreme Court is a liberal justice, but one. So when people are like, hurry up and sue, you better be careful what you wish for, because you just might get it. And if you sue and make your way all the way to the Michigan Supreme Court on a Second Amendment issue, I would say, and if I were a betting man, I'm not a betting man, but if I were, I would say you'd probably lose everything you were willing to wager, whether it would turn out in your favor or not. Probably not going to work out so good for you. Now let's look at the United States Supreme Court. We had a very based conservative district judge that was willing to set aside this ruling From at that time, it was the Biden and Garland ruling with the ATF. Now it's, I hate to say this, but now it's and this does suck to say this, but I have to report it accurately, okay? This is now the Trump Bondi administration. It's ATF versus the Second Amendment and the right to manufacture your own firearm. I mean, but look, we have the Trump slump right now. Nobody's buying anything. Everybody's good. There's never going to be any attacks on the Second Amendment because your guy or our guy or whoever you want to call him won. All right. And then people are like, well, the Supreme Court justices are like the most important thing a president can do. And with these 3 recent Supreme Court conservative justices that Trump appointed and ended up getting confirmed into the Supreme Court, we're good with the Supreme Court too. I mean, I've heard so many people say lately, dude, we've got the presidency. And people just speak in general terms. I'm not trying to pick apart those terms. I know some of you are like huge Trump fans that are watching right now. Some of you can't stand him. And then there's a third category that's like, dude, he was less worse. And of course, I've made my views very, very clear. Kamala, whatever she calls herself. I think it's Kamala because she kind of looks like a camel, like the dromedary. But look, so a lot of you are like, hey, look, it was the least worst, whatever. Set all that aside right now. Chime in on yourself, whatever. However you think about that. You're Trump 100%. You can't stand Trump no matter what, or he was less worse. All right. But even within that, a lot of people in the gun and 2A community say things like, we have the presidency. We have the U.S. House. We have the Senate. We have the Supreme Court. The world's our oyster. We're going to be able to order any Second Amendment repeal we want, like it's off of a menu. And that's a very pleasant thought. Except for this just happened. This Supreme Court system, this Supreme Court decision just happened. Attorney General Bondi versus Vanderstock versus the Second Amendment versus privately made firearms just went 7-2 against us, right? So it's kind of an interesting concept where all the time it's like, dude, the courts will save us all, except for we kind of just got smacked in the teeth just now. Now, I'm going to get into a little bit of the case here itself because, yeah, the camels, I agree. The camels will be offended by that statement. I know, I said Kamala Harris, she kind of looks like a camel. I did just offend camels. You know what I mean? And yes, hooty hoo, what's happening, man? Look, lawyers are very expensive. That's why it's always an uphill fight in court. And in this case, it was all the way to the very top. And it didn't go so well, did it? I'm just going to pull up a little bit of this court opinion because Neil Gorsuch, okay, conservative Justice Gorsuch did decide with the ATF on this matter. And again, one more time, guys. It's not like literally on its face a Second Amendment lawsuit. And they're going to say that they went through the confines of the Administrative Procedures Act and that they had to look at it as a facial case. And they're going to mention the Salerno deference and all of this type of stuff. But I would note, though, that when they refer to like their authority, they have to rule under Gorsuch and the majority, the 6 other justices. They keep referring to the Gun Control Act of 1968. That's the problem, though. See, they're assuming that the Gun Control Act of 1968 is constitutional. And since they're assuming that it's constitutional, then that would mean these rules by the ATF, originally, promulgated under Biden's DOJ, they're going to say, well, look, this rule is constitutional because even if in one instance, this is what they call using the Salerno deference. It says that even if in one instance the rule complies with the law, then the rule's fine. What? Yeah, actually, that's the crazy part. So we're going to go through here, 63 pages long. I just want to read a few excerpts and tell you where some of this doesn't sit right with me. And obviously, if you didn't get that by now, I do disagree with the majority's decision. And I actually agree almost wholeheartedly with Clarence Thomas and Samuel Alito's dissents, because the justices do have the ability to either concur with the majority decision that the majority voted for, written by Gorsuch, so they can write a concurrence, and some of them did, like Sotomayor, Kavanaugh, and then there can be a dissent saying, hey, I voted against it, and here's why I disagree with you. So I'm just skipping down to section 2. This is page 10, and trust me, we're not going to read a 60-page document tonight. I just wanted to go over it a little bit because this is interesting. As presented to us, this case does not ask us to resolve whether ATF's new regulations and 478.11 and 478.2 may be lawfully applied to particular weapons parts kits or unfinished frames or receivers. Okay, so they're saying it does not ask us to resolve whether it's just generally a particular weapon specifically or just parts kits or finished frames and receivers. Instead, the plaintiffs have pursued what the lower courts called a facial pre-enforcement challenge to the agency's authority to regulate any weapons parts kits or unfinished frames or receivers. And that's essentially what the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals and the lower judge found. They said, whoa. The ATF only has the purview to regulate firearms. And since these are not firearms, it's outside of their authority to be able to regulate them, because the Gun Control Act of 1968 covers guns, not just what you would call a box of parts or pieces of plastic. And there's this fine line whether something's readily convertible or not, because that is mentioned in the Gun Control Act. However, people have been submitting these so-called 80%ers, right? That's just kind of a name that they made up just to brand it as something. But the ATF for years and years had said, no, this isn't quite a firearm. It's unfinished. So since it's not a firearm, it's outside of our purview. And that's basically what we're talking about here. Then Biden came in and said, well, yeah, actually it is. That these so-called unfinished firearms, or I like to call them just pieces of plastic and metal, because to me it's either a firearm or it's not. If it hasn't crossed the threshold to where it is, then it's not. So why isn't the ATF regulating the length that you have to mow your lawn, right? I'm looking at the grass turning green here. I'll be mowing lawns for customers soon. It's like, well, what? That's stupid. They regulate firearms from the Gun Control Act. They don't regulate how long your grass is. Okay. Well, then why aren't they coming in there regulating this plastic straw? Dude, come on, man. They don't regulate straws. Okay. And then you move just a little closer. Well, why aren't they regulating this hunk of plastic? Dude, it's called the Gun Control Act. It doesn't regulate just a piece of plastic. Okay, that's where we sit. Because there's pieces of plastic that the ATF had previously said for a long time, these are not firearms. They don't reach the criteria, and they don't. If you just look at the definition of a firearm as defined by the GCA, Gun Control Act of 1968, they don't. So it's just like, well, if it's not a firearm, then it's not subject to a law that regulates firearms. Now, again, just back up, because here's my argument from the very beginning, and this should be like a one-sentence court decision. Yeah, the Gun Control Act of 1968, that's not the supreme law of the land. The supreme law of the land is the Second Amendment, and it says shall not be infringed. So my argument would be, look, these aren't firearms. They're just pieces of plastic and metal. But even if they were, you don't have the ability to regulate them anyways, because shall not be infringed means that all gun control laws are unconstitutional. So we shouldn't even have to be here, but here we are. So it goes through, it says, in a challenge like that, the government represents, quote, the possibility that ATF's regulation may be invalid as applied. In some cases, does not mean that the regulation is facially invalid. Instead, the plaintiff's burden is to show that the rule itself is inconsistent with the statute on its face. So the burden of proof isn't on the government, actually. So if you say, look, this rule is unconstitutional, the government has to prove it is constitutional. Which is how it's supposed to work, as far as I know. No, this is actually the opposite. You have to prove that it's inconsistent with the law on its face. Yeah. So the government can just simply say, our rule doesn't violate the law. And then they have to come back. You as the plaintiff have to come back and say, here's how I can prove to you it violates the law. But here's the thing. even if it violates the law, this is what they found here, 7-2 decision. Even if the rule violates the law in some areas, as long as the rule doesn't violate the law in one area, that's all it takes. Okay, this is under the Salerno test. As long as there's one area, if they can find one specimen, one piece of all of the almost infinite possibilities of privately manufacturing your own firearm, if they can find one instance where the rule does comply with the law, then that means the rule gets to stand. Yeah, you heard me. That's literally the essence of what was decided here. Now, this is the exact opposite of the Blackstone principle that this country's justice system was founded on. Now, Blackstone came in, I believe it was 1769, before the United States was a country, and said, look, it's better that 10 guilty people would go free than for one innocent person to suffer. That's how important it is to make sure nobody's ever suffering that was falsely convicted. Now, Ben Franklin heard that, one of our great founding fathers, and he said, I agree, but that's actually not good enough for America. And then Franklin kind of expounded on the Blackstone principle and said, no, it's better that 100 guilty people go free than for one innocent person to ever suffer. Now, that's kind of what makes America different than other countries. But when it comes to this type of stuff, when it comes to these rules that are promulgated via so-called authority from the Administrative Procedures Act, keep in mind, this rule on against privately made firearms was not a new law passed by Congress. This is the ATF via their authority that Congress delegated to them in the Gun Control Act of 1968. Now, I would note the ATF wasn't even around as an agency in 1968. And if you look at the way it was formed, it wasn't even ever constitutionally formed to begin with. That's a whole nother rabbit hole I'm not going to get into here. So instead, the plaintiff's burden is to show that the rule itself is inconsistent. And they're citing another Supreme Court case here. Again, they're going to cite so many Supreme Court cases here. They're going to cite the Gun Control Act of 1968 over and over. They're not going to really talk about the Second Amendment at all. Nowhere in either of their briefs before us do the plaintiffs dispute this assessment. Accordingly, we take it as given for our purposes here. In doing so, we turn first to the question whether the rules, provisions addressing weapons parts kits are inconsistent on their face with the GCA. The answer turns to subsection A of 921A3. There, remember, the GCA authorizes ATF to regulate any weapon, including a starter gun, which will or is designed to or may be readily converted to expel a projectile by the action of an explosive. Okay. Inherent in this language are two requirements. First, a weapon must be present. See, that's the key part. The weapon must be present. To me, dude, the case should have gone the opposite and it should have been over right here. If you have something that's not capable of expelling a projectile via an explosion, then it's not a weapon. Since you only have the purview to regulate weapons, it should have stopped right there, but they did not agree. First, a weapon must be present. Second, that weapon must meet one of the three criteria. Dude, there's only one criteria. The Constitution literally says shall not be infringed. How's there three criteria? No, there is no three. The right to keep and bear arms, it shall not be infringed. But that's not what we're under right now. You're going to see we're under this Supreme Court case, another Supreme Court case, dozens of other cases. They'll mention every case law they can. They'll mention everything they can and try to avoid it literally like it's the plague to avoid the actual Constitution itself. I want you to think about that. When that's the only reason the judicial branch was established at all, is to judge whether something's constitutional or not, but we've just removed the Constitution from all of this. I'll continue. Second, that weapon must meet one of the three criteria. It must be able to expel a projectile by the action of an explosive, designed to do so, or susceptible of ready conversion to operate that way. As the Fifth Circuit saw it, provisions addressing weapons parts kits are facially invalid because no weapons parts kits can ever satisfy the statute's two requirements. And I wholeheartedly agree with the Fifth Circuit. It's kind of like obvious. However, Gorsuch and the other 6 justices said, we disagree because to our eyes, at least some kits will satisfy both. So keep in mind, they can make this rule affecting potentially all kits. Now, it's not necessarily going to, here's the thing, this new rule is not necessarily going to affect all kits. In fact, they're saying many of them it won't. But here's the problem. You can read this whole thing to your blue in the face, and they won't specifically tell you which kits it doesn't affect. This is just yet another case of we made a ruling. We might know 1 or 2 things that are banned, but a lot of it, and this is me paraphrasing, later on in this ruling, it says, well, this is going to have to be determined by a case-by-case basis in the lower courts when people's whole lives are ruined. And remember Brian Malinowski, when the ATF raids your house, a lot of times you die, and your dog, and Ruby Ridge, and Waco, Texas, and so many other atrocities. If you're lucky and they don't just kill you outright, you're going to be in financial ruin and shamed by a lot of people in your community, probably maybe lose your job. And it's just, lawyers are very, very expensive. Like our friend Hootie who said earlier, and this is going to affect a lot of people because you're going to be like having to sit there and fight this from the ground up again, all the way through. It's basically that old saying. I'll give you the acronym. They say FAFO. I don't know. Is this parts kit? Is this legit? I don't know. Well, you'll just have to find out. F around and you just might find out. You might be okay. You might not be so good. You might be laying there dead at 6 a.m. in a puddle of your own blood when strangers are busting your door in and you're a law-abiding citizen. So to you, it's probably just a burglar because you wouldn't even dream it's the cops. But say it is, and you come to the door with your gun, it's probably not going to go so well for you. Well, maybe, hopefully. Hope and pray that doesn't happen. You're going to have yourself tied up in court for a long time at the very least. Even if you win, the punishment's the process. But they said, we disagree because to our eyes, at least some of the kits. Now, this is one of the main arguments of this whole case. All parts kits don't have to be considered readily convertible. All parts kits don't need to be subject to the GCA for this rule to stand. Actually, they say they only need to find 1 instance. If there's 1 parts kit that, according to them, constitutes a firearm, then that means the rule can stand. Now, keep in mind the original rule itself, which apparently is back into effect on the table, right, says that they consider readily convertible 8 hours in a well-equipped machine shop. If you can convert whatever material you have into a firearm in 8 hours in a well-equipped machine shop, that falls under readily convertible. Keep that in mind. That's what the actual rule that's at hand. That the Supreme Court said that, yeah, the rule is, it's going to be upheld because it was remanded down telling the lower courts that they got it wrong. In the lower courts, they had set aside the rule saying it was violating the Administrative Procedures Act and that it didn't comply with the Gun Control Act of 1968. You guys following along? It's kind of confusing, but hopefully I'm saying it in a way that makes a little bit of sense. I'm going to check the chat real quick here, then I'm going to get right back into this again. I see I have some more super chats. I'm going to read those in just a minute, so thank you. And we did reach our super chat goal already tonight of 5, so I will be coming back in a little bit and definitely take some questions from all of you. All right. Now they go back to Section A. This is where it gets a little juicy. And again, I'm not going to read 60 pages. To appreciate why it helps to work with an example, take a weapons parts kit formed prominently in the record before us. The Polymer 80s Buy, Build, Shoot kit, quote, it comes with all of the necessary components to build a Glock variant semi-automatic pistol. Application to petition for cert 219A. And it is so easy to assemble that in an ATF test, an individual who had never before encountered the kit was able to produce a gun from it in 21 minutes using only common tools and instructions found in publicly available YouTube videos. The first picture below shows the kit. All right. And YouTube, for whoever's watching that works at YouTube, we're going through a Supreme Court case right now. All right. It's the official Supreme Court of the United States documentation to the ghost of Susan Wiki or whoever else is watching. So now they're going to go through and they're going to assess, all right, whether this is a firearm or not. And they're going through all this goobly gob about the GCA. Now, this is what's interesting. Plainly, the finished buy, build, shoot kit is an instrument of combat. No one would confuse the semi-automatic pistol pictured above with a tool or a toy. Of course, as sold, the kit requires some assembly. So what they're saying is, see the one on the bottom? That's the same thing as what's on the top. No, they're actually not the same thing. They're literally not. Because the one on the bottom can fire a projectile via an explosive. The picture here on the top cannot. Now, here's the crazy part. So does that literally mean that if you have petroleum oil reserves in the ground, well, those could be made into polymer later. And heck, someone that's good at making polymer could probably whip up enough polymer to make a frame in a matter of minutes. Or let's say it's a steel frame gun and there's iron ore found within the rocks of a mountain. Well, hey, someone that knows what they're doing could get that out of the mountain and melt it down pretty quick. I mean, you get what I'm saying, right? Like, dude, like, obviously everything on the earth is convertible into something. And I've been to firearms manufacturing facilities before. I've been to PSA quite a few times. You should see how fast a well-equipped machine shop can crank this stuff out. Dude, literally, go back to the original ruling. It says that if you can make it in a well-equipped machine shop within 8 hours, that still falls under readily convertible. That's what the actual rule at hand that the Supreme Court just said is good to go, by the way. Huge loss for the Second Amendment in the building community and the right to keep and bear arms community. Dude, you go into a well-equipped machine shop, it's how many hundreds of them, maybe 1,000 of them a day can be produced in 8 hours. I mean, come on. You know? Now, they're going to give an example that it takes 21 minutes, but here's the thing. The rule doesn't say that if it can be made in 21 minutes by an inexperienced ATF agent with common tools, it falls under ghost gun. You have to actually remember what the rule itself said and realize that, yeah, they're going to give us this example here in the case, but that's just because we're under this deference, the Salerno deference, where, look, if just one thing for these facial court reviews, where if just one of the things within the rule, if they can find one example, okay, just one example that they say conforms to the Gun Control Act in this case, then all of it's good to go. The whole rule is good to go, and it's just insane. I literally can't even make sense of it. It's nuts. All right. So let me get back down below this. Okay, so plainly, the finished buy, build, shoot kit is an instrument of combat. No, well, maybe, but maybe not, actually. I own lots of firearms that aren't being used in any combat. They never have, and I didn't even buy them to intend them to be. Some of them I just collect, and I like to look at them. Other ones I just like to have if I ever need to protect myself, my home, my family, my hometown, wherever I'm at, against enemies, foreign and domestic. Maybe there'll be an invasion. Maybe for the reason the Founding Fathers wrote the Second Amendment, a well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state. And since I want to be secure and free, to the right to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed, to fight off a tyrannical government. But I digress. But maybe you're just buying it to hunt with, to collect, to look at it. You might have bought it just as a paperweight, and actually that's your right too. No one would confuse it with a toy. Okay, of course, as sold, the kit requires some assembly, but a number of considerations persuades us that even as sold, the buy, build, shoot kit qualifies as a weapon. So the whole rule gets upheld because they found one thing that they said they believe qualifies a weapon. Consider first a feature of ordinary language. Now this part requires a listener to be dumber than the speaker. I want you all to please sound off on this in the chat. Those of you watching on replay, in the comments. How many people think that this following is ordinary language? How many people have heard of an artifact noun? No, seriously. Who's heard of an artifact noun before literally right now? This is where like this ruling is just so dumb and it kind of like just cuffs all of us right in the teeth. I mean, come on. Consider first a feature of ordinary language. The term weapon is an artifact noun. Dude, artifact noun is not an ordinary language. Look at these people. These people that wear these robes, they are so extraordinary. They can't understand the darn Constitution. They cannot understand what shall not be infringed means. But they're going to tell us that ordinary language is using this term called artifact noun? Now, again, like I said, I don't have a big fancy college degree. I never went to a major university. Didn't go to law school. But I'm just fine without all of that. Like, actually, I'm getting along just fine, and I'm glad I don't have any of it. Because at least, see, here's what I'm starting to think. You go to too much school, and this isn't for everybody, but a lot of people, you go to too much school, you can't understand the word shall. You forget what the word not means, and you forget what the word infringe means, but I do know what those words mean. But nobody in their right mind, and nobody that's even a bit ordinary, has ever used the word artifact now, like even once. But I'm going to continue. So I told you guys I was going to approach this a little different than all of the myriad of 2A lawyers do. The term a weapon is an artifact noun, a word for a thing created by humans. Oh, wow. So Jumanji understood this all of a sudden because she voted and agreed with so-called conservative Justice Neil Gorsuch, so-called conservative Justice Roberts, Kavanaugh, Barrett. I mean, you know. So they understand stuff like artifact noun. That's just so ordinary and plain. She doesn't even know what a woman is. If elected, if appointed to the Supreme Court by the Senate, you may have cases that involve women. What's a woman? I don't know. Nobody knows. She doesn't know what a woman is, all right? But all of a sudden now she's perfectly, well, I don't understand very obscure words like women. Now, I'm not asking all you guys if you understand women. That's a separate question. You'll never fully understand that. But what is a woman? I mean, like, you just won't understand everything that goes on. But look, like, dude, it's adult female person, but she doesn't know that. But all these common, ordinary parlance, like, hey man, you're just sitting around, bumming around, hanging out with the boys on the weekend, and someone's like, yeah, man, let's check out some artifact nouns. Has never been said by an ordinary person even once. But let's continue. I mean, these people are nuts. Think about this. Never heard of the word woman, but they're very fluent with the word artifact noun, which is the most ordinary language there possibly is. Yeah, right. A word for a thing created by humans. Artifact nouns are typically characterized by an intended function rather than by some, an affable natural essence. Wow. These people are. Okay. Reflecting as much, everyday speakers sometimes use artifact nouns to refer to unfinished objects. See where this is going? At least when their intended function is clear. An author might invite your opinion on her latest novel, even though she sends you an unfinished manuscript. A friend, but here's the thing. Here's the kicker, though. The publishing company, would not yet have their hands on it while it's a mere unfinished manuscript. But once it's a novel, then the publisher has their hands on it. See, I'm going to prove Gorsuch and the other 6 wrong in 30 seconds here. Like, literally, it's so easy to prove them wrong. Okay, so hold on. Let's say the publisher goes through and makes its formats. It formats the book, right? The publisher is in charge of putting the book out on the paper and then circulating it to the bookstores. Now, you would refer to it as your friend's novel, even though it's an unfinished manuscript. Sure, you can call it whatever you want, but they're two different things. The manuscript is not having the things done to it or being overseen by the publisher. I'm going to go through a little further here. A friend might speak of the table he just bought from IKEA. This is important. even though hours of assembly remain ahead of him. In both cases, the artifact now fits because the intended function of the unfinished object is obvious to the speaker and listener alike. The term weapon can work this way too. Now, let me back up a little minute. Actually, that's not true. You can call it a table all you want. Just like somebody can call their unfinished parts kit, they can call it a ghost gun all they want. You can call a manuscript a novel all you want. And look, I'll admit people often do. But that manuscript's still not a novel because the publishers haven't gone through and formatted it yet. That IKEA table is still not a table, actually, because you ain't eaten dinner on it yet. And the firearm is not a firearm until it can expel a projectile via an explosion. Let me give a third example that he doesn't list in here. A pile of boards. You can go to Home Depot, Lowe's right now, and they'll say, we'll sell you a deck package. And you put it together, they'll do it at the Pro Desk. And when they're done, your total is $3,925, and they can drop it off and put it in your driveway. And then somebody would say, this is common parlance. They're like, dude, I just got my deck dropped off. Okay. But it's not a deck, and here's how I can prove it. Because a pile of boards sitting at Lowe's or in your driveway, you don't have to have a permit from the building inspector. Now, do you? No. You actually don't need a permit until you actually start a certain point of construction with the job. And then there's certain inspection points that go through when you're building a deck, and it depends what type of international building code your state's on or isn't on. They're going to check different parameters. They'll have a little ball. It can't pass through the spindles or balusters. See, people call them two different things. You can only have so much of a span between your beams and then your joist, and your rim joist has to be this tall. I could actually go on for hours about this topic, but I won't. But no, a pile of lumber, people call it, that's my deck sitting out there. I just ordered my deck from Lowe's. Well, then why don't you need a building permit till you actually build the darn deck? Now, I'm not sticking up for building permits for all things. I'm just telling you that's how it works. Yeah, because it's not actually a deck yet. It doesn't matter how many times people say, dude, look, here's the thing. Get a pile of boards delivered to your driveway. Call your local township or city and call the building inspector and say, come and inspect my deck. He's going to walk around the back and be like, where's the deck? You have no deck. Oh, it's right there. My deck's right there in the driveway. Well, that's just a pile of boards. You have to build it first before it falls under my purview as a building inspector. See, this Supreme Court decision is so stupid, and it's so antithetical to the Second Amendment. His little trite analogies and his artifact nouns actually prove Gorsuch and the other six wrong. In an attempt to try to belittle us and be like, well, you know what? Yeah, I bought my table from IKEA. Yeah, you can say that all you want. It ain't a dang table because you ain't had dinner on it. Because it's still in the box. Your deck that you bought from Lowe's, it's not a deck, and you can't even get a permit. You can't even get an inspection for it because it's not a deck. So these other kits, whether the person's intention is to make a firearm or not, because this decision completely ignores the fact that many people buy these kits and never even have the intention to build them at all, actually. No, I'm being dead serious. I've known of many people who have told me in the past, yeah, man, I'm just stacking my kits up. And I'm like, how many did you build? And they're like, well, I built none. I'm like, why not? They're like, dude, I just want the kits. I just want them because I want them. Okay, why ask why? Hey, I mean, you bought them. You worked hard for your money. Spend it on whatever you want. So no, it's actually not inevitable that eventually the IKEA table in a box becomes a table, because I've been to many yard sales before where you can get an IKEA or equivalent piece of furniture, and the person just never had the time or the patience or the desire to put it together. And here you are 5 years later, knock a little dust off the box, and you're still buying it in the box. Things that are in a box of parts, actually, it's not just a given that it's going to be turned into whatever you perceive the end product's going to be. Actually, I know people who have bought parts kits that use them for artwork. And not only do they not actually finish completing it where it would meet the definition of firearm, they actually render it even further away from what an actual firearm would be. I know people who buy stuff that's considered, according to the courts, this is already a firearm because it falls under readily convertible. I know people that have bought them just because they make a nice display stand to host their bayonet collections and such. No, I mean, that's serious. Not necessarily with the P80, the one that you saw in the pictures, but with other kits, yeah, people literally take just enough with like a barrel stub and a bayonet lug and mount their bayonet just because that's a nice, attractive way to display it. So, first of all, these people have no idea what people are necessarily going to do with these. And second of all, their analogies that they use, and I don't know, tell me if you think I made a good, compelling argument here. I think their analogies actually prove how wrong they are. Literally. Imagine a rifle disassembled for storage, transport, or cleaning. Well, okay, it's already a rifle, though. See how sneaky this is? If it's a rifle that's been disassembled, it had to have been a rifle first before it could have been disassembled. A rifle that's disassembled. Imagine a rifle disassembled for storage, transport, or cleaning. It may take time to render the rifle useful for combat, but its intended function is clear. And as a matter of everyday speech, that rifle is a weapon, whether disassembled or combat ready. No, actually, it was a rifle first because it first had to have been assembled before it could be disassembled. This analogy is terrible. See, look, if you once built a deck and then tore it apart into a pile of wood, you still had a deck at one time. But if you have a pile of wood that's never been constructed into a deck, you never had a deck. Not even for a moment. Right? So they're basically saying, imagine a rifle. Now, the predicating clause is you have to imagine a rifle. So just stop right there. He says, imagine a rifle. Okay, I'm imagining a rifle. Now, if you said, imagine a box of parts, I would imagine something in my mind completely different than I would a rifle. Wouldn't you? Doesn't matter what the box of parts are. It doesn't matter what the rifle is. If I say, hey, imagine. I say, Jane Locke, how's it going, Jane? Jane, just imagine what a box of parts would look like. She'd say, okay. Now, Jane, imagine a rifle, and she'd pick her favorite one, or maybe her least favorite one, and she'd imagine that. These are not the same thing, but let's read this again. Imagine a rifle. So first, there has to be a rifle you're imagining. All right. Rifle, check. Disassemble for storage. All right. Transport or cleaning. It may take time to render the rifle useful and cover combat. Yep, that's all true. It may take longer to put the rifle together than it would be to complete a buy, build, shoot kit. Actually, yeah, there's some rifles that are so complicated to if you intricately take them apart. Oh, yeah. It could take you well more than 20 minutes in some cases, sure. But none of that matters because first we had to imagine a rifle for it to be a rifle. And her saying, as a matter of everyday speech, the rifle is a weapon, whether disassembled or combat ready, in the same way. And for the same reason, an ordinary speaker might well describe the buy, bill, shoot kit as a weapon. Here's the problem, though. There's legal definitions in the Gun Control Act and in the National Firearms Act that define what a weapon is. All right? There are no statutes. And again, I think all these laws are unconstitutional, but let me continue with the framework. Yet here we are, right? We're just, okay. So there's definitions of what a firearm is. There is no law that says this is what a parts kit is. That's the difference. It doesn't matter how many people call parts a rifle. They can be wrong a million times. There could be a million people that call a parts kit a weapon. And if they're wrong and it's not a weapon, they're still wrong. Just because a million people say something wrong doesn't make it right. Conversely, a million people just like me and just like you say, look, machine guns, according to the Constitution, can't be banned. Machine guns should be legal. Machine guns should be legal. Machine guns should be legal. I could say it 1 million times, and it still doesn't make it legal. A million of you, and this video probably won't even get 1,000 views, let alone a million, but humor me. A million people watching this video could just start chanting ad nauseum saying, machine guns should be legal. Machine guns should be legal. Or machine guns are legal. Machine guns are legal. Whatever the chant would be. Does it just make it legal? No. 1 trillion people, if they existed, could say, this is how it is. If the law says different, FAFO, watch your dog, make sure it's in good order. They're still going to come in your house, and they're going to come for you if you have it. Just saying something doesn't make it so. This is just so, pardon my French, this is one of the dumbest Supreme Court decisions I've ever heard. If I heard somebody that was going to the middle school, alternative education, and here's the thing, though, shout out to all the people who went to alternative education because you're 10 times smarter than this justice is. I'm being serious. Look, you can call something what you want all you want. It either is or it ain't. And if we're going by definitions or we're going by laws and they are citing the GCA, then that's what it is or what it ain't according to that. But let me continue. In the same way and for the same reason, an ordinary speaker might, and he just says might, well describe the buy, build, shoot kit as a quote weapon. Yes, perhaps a half hour of work is required before anyone can fire a shot, but even as sold, the kit comes with all necessary components. And its intended function as an instrument of combat is obvious. Really, the kit's name says it all. Buy, build, shoot. Well, okay, you buy it, you build it, and you shoot it. Not make or remake, but build. And that's actually is important when it comes to statutory language. Buy, build, shoot. Okay, and you've always been able to manufacture a firearm in the United States. And then even once gun control laws started piling up on us and we went far away from the Second Amendment and far away from being America anymore, then, the law-abiding citizen could still build their own firearm. State laws may vary. I'm just talking federal. So what's the problem here? Next, consider what the statute itself has to say about the term weapon. It goes through a starter gun, normally fires blanks, not bullets, and is usually found at sporting events, not in combat. Okay, fine. So because they decided that a starter gun to set up a track meet or swim meet or whatever, and then they run, right? Or they swim. It's like, and other events too, right? I'm just saying, look, they decided to name starter gun on its face in the Gun Control Act. And he's making this big to do about that. Then he talks about, okay, if they only wanted to, finally, notice another feature of the statute. If Congress had wanted to regulate only operable firearms, it could have simply addressed weapons that can expel a projectile by the action. But Congress didn't say that. Didn't say there. Instead, Congress explained that a weapon also qualifies for the regulation if it's either designed to accomplish that function or capable of being readily converted to do so. Okay, the latter provision necessarily contemplates that something short of fully operational will qualify as weapons. No. Here's the problem. This is under a false predicate. It explains that weapon also clause if it's designed, or to accomplish the function, or capable of being readily convertible. But first you have to go back. That's not what all people are necessarily even doing with these. If a person that's not legally allowed to possess a firearm makes that a legal ghost gun, then that person's breaking the law. If they murder with it, then murder is already against the law. So many of these things are always against the law. Just because people will call their kit, and he's saying that somebody may commonly call it a weapon. Just because people call it something doesn't mean that it is. So they're making all these assumptions that may be true a lot of the time, but they're not going to be true all of the time. But now we're to the point where under the Salerno, they say, well, no, as long as the rule meets the statute, we can find at least one instance where it does. Now the whole rule is good to go. Let me scroll down just a little bit more because I don't want to dwell on this the whole night. It's just really annoying. Okay, yep, and this is going to reiterate this. I'm moved to page 13. Okay. Well, I'm not going to read all of it because we could keep going, but I'm just going to say, while we recognize the problem, this case does not require us to untangle exactly how far subsection A reaches. The plaintiffs argue only that 478.11's provision addressing weapon parts kits is facially inconsistent with the statute. Well, yeah, because they don't regulate parts. The Fifth Circuit adopted the same view after coming to the unqualified conclusion that weapons parts kits can never satisfy the statute's two tests. And again, I agree with the Fifth Circuit as well as Clarence Thomas and Samuel Alito. to resolve this case, it is enough to say those assessments are mistaken, because at least some weapon parts kits satisfy both of subsection A's test. 478.11 is not facially invalid. Now, future cases may present other and more difficult questions about ATF's regulations, but we take cases as they come, and today resolve only the question posed to us. So that's what I was paraphrasing earlier. Well, what about this? But what about that? Well, you'll just have to go down that road and find out now, won't you? Listen to this. Because at least some weapons parts kit satisfy both of subsection A's test, and I don't agree with them at all. I think that IKEA table in a box is a terrible example. I think that manuscript, somebody calling it a novel, I think that's a terrible example. But yet again, according to them, according to the majority, that was a great example. And because they found at least something in the rule that they believed satisfied, was congruent with the Gun Control Act of 68, that means it's good. We're not going to overturn the rule. Now, we're going to go down to just a little bit here. I'm almost done with this part, and I am going to read through some comments here. I'm going to go all the way down to like page 62. This is a little bit from the Alito dissent. Alito and Thomas did not agree. Gosh, Thomas wrote like a really good dissent. It would take hours to go through it all. It is 60 pages long. Let me see where we're at here. All right, this should be, what did I have here? Yeah, page 62. So we're right near the end of the document. I'm almost done scrolling through. It takes these people 62 pages. Okay, so this is Alito dissenting. You can't even make this up. Remember earlier when I said like the Chevron deference so-called is not over? Well, that was United States Department of Natural Resources v. Chevron. Supposedly that can't be used anymore, but hold that thought, Chevron. We're still under Chevron, just another Chevron. I'm like, oh, I just want to be under, right? Who agrees with me? I just want to be under shall not be infringed. I don't want to be under this other version of Chevron. Applying the Salerno rule in a case in which a rule is challenged under that provision is exceeding the agency's statutory authority may have far-reaching consequences. Okay, as a commentator has observed, Salerno would seem to dictate that a plaintiff who challenges a rule cannot ever win unless he can show that there is no set of circumstances in which the regulation would be consistent with the statute. Wow. He's right. I completely agree with Alito here. Think about this. Let's say this again. A plaintiff who challenges a rule cannot ever win, which means you're never going to win. We could just stop there. The plaintiff, we're never going to be able to win again if they keep applying this, is what he's saying. And he's right. So Salerno would seem to dictate that a plaintiff who challenges a rule cannot ever win unless he can show that there is no set of circumstances. So none at all anywhere in the whole world of all time, even if it's an example of once, unless you can prove. The plaintiff has to prove, by the way. The burden's now on you. It's not on the government anymore now under this. Just keep that in mind. It's all opposite of what you thought you knew. You thought, well, you're innocent till proven guilty. The government has to, for certain types of criminal law, not for any of this. The government's innocent and you have to prove the government's guilty. Here's the problem, though. Governments don't have rights. Only people have rights. All right, I'm going to get through this because you guys want to talk about the governor of Michigan a little bit, don't you? The governor of Michigan. Yeah, these are not good people at all. All right. Can show that there's no set of circumstances in which the regulation would be consistent with the statute. And because it would take an extraordinarily obtuse agency to write a regulation so completely wrong that applying Salerno in the statutory context would seem to dictate that plaintiffs would always lose. Salerno, it says Salerno versus Chevron. Oh. So we're back to another Chevron deference here. Just think about this. All we've heard about the last so many years is the Chevron deference needs to go. The Chevron deference needs to go. Oh, it did. Oh, wow, we're good to go. 2A Edu. We just need to sue on everything. Huh. I was hoping that would be the case. No, that Chevron deference, that got overturned recently. 2A Edu. Hold on. All of these 2A lawyers came out and said that Chevron got overturned. Oh, it did. It did. But that was Chevron versus the Department of Natural Resources. This is the different Chevron that now rules our life. This is now the supreme law of the land. Salerno v. Chevron. It's a different type of Chevron. Why are these all Chevron? Ugh. Thus, this extension of Salerno would represent a huge boon for the administrative state. Yes. Look, Congress is just going to write themselves out of a job. The Constitution says Congress makes law. They've delegated all their authority, all their responsibilities for so many subjects, including Second Amendment related things, to agencies via the Administrative Procedures Act. And now we have the ATF writing law. That's what's happening here. We have a fourth, completely unchecked in almost every way, branch of government that's going completely rogue. And by the way, no, the Trump administration did not get rid of a third of the ATF agents. That was fake news. That didn't happen. They're still going strong. The ATF sitting here writing law. And you have to come through to prove that there's not one example in the whole world within this rule where they're right on it. And if you can't prove that, then the whole law is just rule. Okay, rule, air quotes, that has full force and effective law. It gets to stay. Thus, this extension of Salerno would represent a huge boon for the administrative state. Yep, I agree with the justice. It would also all but settle the debate about whether 7062 of the APA authorizes a court to render a rule unenforceable across the board. Respondents asserted a typical claim seeking to have a rule set aside in its entirety. And if that claim fails, because there are at least some situations in which the application of the rule would be lawful, then it seems to follow that virtually all such claims will fail as well. This is what he's saying is this is major Supreme Court precedent here. This isn't just going to be about these so-called ghost guns. Now they're going to be able to cite the Bondi v. Vanderstock case, the Salerno versus Chevron. Okay. This is the other type of Chevron deference you didn't know as much about that we're under. The understanding of the set aside of the power. The understanding of the set aside power that has long been prevalent in the courts of appeals will be overturned, and parties who may be adversely affected by a rule will be reduced to filing as applied challenges. That's the FAFO. Like, oh, I don't know, just see what happens. Maybe you'll be dealing with it in court. Maybe you won't. Maybe you'll be just fine. Maybe you'll be dead. Maybe you'll just have a life of financial ruin. You'll just have to find out. And what a lot of people are going to say is, oh, well, maybe I'll just tap out of all of this. Those are the smart ones, probably. Just live in a van down by the river, I guess. Guess that's what, well, yeah. That's what they probably want. Perhaps that is what the law calls for, but we should not effect such a change without thorough briefing and argument. For these reasons, I must respectfully dissent. I would either direct the parties to brief the Salerno issues or vacate the judgment below and remand so the issue can be addressed first by the Court of Appeals. What do you all think? What do you think? How easy is it going to be? Here's the crazy part, guys. You could take America's most popular rifle, the Armalite Rifle 15, right? You ever heard of her? Dude, that could be converted into full auto much quicker in many cases than these kits they're talking about. Well, isn't that a machine gun then? Because machine gun also falls under readily convertible. Yeah, but we're good now because that would only happen under the Biden administration. Now, he did write that rule. He did. But the actual case was decided as Bondi v. Vanderstock. Which means, as far as I can tell, they kept pushing the case all the way through, even after the administration changed. And I have another question. I want you all to, because last time I asked you, I said, what about Pam Bondi? Anyone heard of her? Some people call her Blondie. And I said, well, maybe I just, maybe I'm being a little biased. You remember that? I'm just rewinding from last week. So maybe I'm being a little biased because, I don't know, man. I'm not really into blondes too much. I'm more of a brunette guy. You know what I'm saying? And I'm like, well, a lot of people say Bonnie's nice to look at, but she ain't really my type. My wife's a lot better to look at, and I'm happy. I'd way rather be where I am than looking at anybody like this. So look, here's the deal. So with that said, I said, guys, look, where's this executive order that Trump put out? Okay, about 7 weeks ago now, that said the Attorney General shall come up with a list of all of these different criteria, including executive orders that Biden had done against the Second Amendment. And I said, now, I'm getting a little impatient here with her. And then a lot of my viewers came back and said, but to EDU, she has so much more important stuff to do. I said, all right. Well, look, guys, I'm being a little impatient, though. You know what I mean? Because to me, the Second Amendment's the most important issue. Because, literally, it was put there not if, but for when they come for all the rest. Without the Second Amendment, we don't even have any semblance of America anymore. So it's my number one issue. And I'm like, all right, well. And I was like, yeah, man, I'm sure everybody in the 2A and gun community is getting impatient. Well, I found out I was wrong. Well, my convictions are true for myself. Obviously, I was wrong, actually. When I kind of polled the audience, most people actually came back and said, no, man, you need to give her a little more time. Now, some people said, just give her a little more time. One person even said, just give her a little more time, as in till 2026 or 27. I mean, most people have been kind of telling me that I've been talking to dude. She's got a lot of other stuff going on. Just give her a little more time. So I'm asking you all again right now, because think about how this happened here. This case comes out 2 days ago, this decision on this Biden era rule. If she had come up with that list of stuff that Trump told her she shall give him, the Attorney General shall, it said. It didn't say when you get enough time, kind of, sort of. Maybe a little bit. No. When she was directed by the president, Trump, and she didn't get him the list 3 weeks ago, he's been signing executive orders just one after another. He's quick. Now, what would have happened if she would have got that list to him 3 weeks ago? Well, let's say 2 weeks ago. What if he would have signed an executive order totally repealing the Biden rule? That would have been interesting. So, and I'm just asking a further question for everyone that's told me, dude, you just got to give her a little more time. You got to be a little more patient. Okay, how much more time does she need? What if she had only been a week late on the rule and he had gotten the list of stuff to Trump, and then Trump would have hurried up and that fancy signature he has, right? And said, here, I hereby repeal Biden's ghost gun rule. Well, Supreme Court wouldn't have been able to finish ruling, as far as I know, on a rule that no longer exists. How many more of these Biden-era rules and Obama-era rules and even some Trump-era rules? I'm glad to see that Trump's promising to get rid of some of his own gun control stuff he's done too. I'm trying to give him a second chance here. I think so far he's showing some promise for the 2A. He did do that executive order. I'm giving him a check mark in the positive. Count him for that for sure. Not bashing Trump right this minute. Not yet. We'll see if we need to or not. If we need to, we will, but I'm not doing that today. Bondi, though. I've already told you guys, my patience has run out a while ago on this. How much longer? How much more important things does she have to do? I wonder how many more of these Biden and Obama era, you know what I'm saying? Rules have to come up in front of the Supreme Court. Okay. How many have to go up in front of the Supreme Court before they can unwrite them? See, here's the interesting thing. I've heard a couple people say this. Some people say that Trump can still just unwrite the rule. That may be the case, but I'm not sure, and here's why. Because I was listening to another lawyer talk, and this is kind of the camp I'm in, but I'm not sure exactly. So if it's signed in by a president, the other president can, quote, unsign it. And that typically is what happens. But this is interesting. Now SCOTUS has weighed in. First of all, if the Supreme Court had weighed in and said this rule is unconstitutional, all right, then I don't think it would have been constitutional for, let's just say, the governor of Michigan becomes president in the future. Oh my gosh, don't even think about it. But I'm just giving you a hypothetical. I gave you a really bad one just to prove my point here. The governor of Michigan becomes president. She'll be running for president too. Trust me on that. Okay. So she comes in and later says, all right, well, here's my rule. And you can go back and forth. But if the Supreme Court would have said that rule was unconstitutional, then I don't think she would have been able to come in, President Whitmer, and made another ghost gun ban rule like that. But here's what I was told too. Here's what will happen. If Trump goes to unsign this now, that the Supreme Court said it's good to go, instantly you're going to have Mom's Demand in every town and Brady and all these gun groups. They're going to sue Trump instantly. And they're going to judge shop. And they're going to go immediately. Okay? They're going to go immediately to the first liberal judge they can find. And they're going to say, we need an injunction put on Trump's order to repeal Biden's order. Here's what I've seen happen now for a long time. Okay? Okay, here's what I've seen for a long time now. I've seen it where everything Trump's doing via executive order, virtually everything he's been doing via an executive order, whoever's against it, judge shops, finds a leftist judge and immediately shuts down his EO. Faster than the ink's even dry on it. So here's what actually is most likely. Trump will sign an executive order if he does. This is if, and I'm hoping he does. I'm just going to have to see it to believe it. I don't believe any of these people on the Second Amendment unless I literally see it. All right? So immediately, Trump says, I just unsigned Biden's ghost gun ban. Bam, liberal judge shopping next morning. Every town gets in there. And the judge says, nope, I put an injunction on your executive order that repeals it. The old rule still takes into effect. Then you got to sit there and promulgate it and fight it all the way through the courts again. Here's the problem. The issue just went all the way up to the Supreme Court and we lost bad, 7-2. So actually, Trump can't just sign executive orders. Actually, did you guys know that? Well, first of all, executive orders by all presidents have gone way too far. Okay? They're only supposed to be able to sign executive orders that have to do with organizing their own offices. This has been corrupted way before Trump, a long time ago. They're all look, it's like this vicious cycle. Such and such president did so many executive orders. Now the next one has to do even more. Then the next one does it even more. It's a vicious cycle. It's been going on for a long time. How does Trump just sign an executive order, guys, and have it actually go into effect? Now, he can sign them, okay? You got me. He can sign them. He can sign them, but then immediately, for everyone I've seen, there was actually of consequence, okay, that people cared about. Some liberal judge instantly gets in there and goes, nope. Nope, I'm going to set aside that executive order and say that it's unconstitutional. Yeah, there's lots of activists, liberal, whatever you want to call them, judges, that are going to stop everything Trump does. Because here's the problem with this country right now. 3/4 of this country has TDS, Trump derangement syndrome. Either they have it because they hate him so bad or they love him so much they refuse to ever see if he makes a mistake. There's not many people that are just middle of the road. Don't forget that. People either love him and they hate you if you call him out. Hate's a strong word, but they get mad at you. In some cases, hate you, whatever. If you call him out in even one thing, because he's looked at just so awesomely by so many people, then the other half just hates him and finds him so repugnant, they're going to cancel out everything he does just because his name came up. And there's very few people that are like, yeah, like whatever. I don't care, or I don't even know, or there's a bit of this, there's a bit of that. No, we are bifurcated. We are in two categories basically in this country. You're either on Team Red or you're on Team Blue. And everybody on Team Blue is trying to smack down everything he's doing as fast as they can with all of these district federal judges. All right. MC Joe, it was GVR'd back down. Well, yeah, that's what all Supreme Court cases do. So I don't know if this is your first Supreme Court case you've read or not, but that's what they always do. They send it back down to the lower court and say, here, it's sent back down to you, but this is how you have to decide it. That's just literally how it works. Every time when there's a Supreme Court case, they go through on these type where they go through and they find a lower judge's decision was wrong. Now, if there's different types of cases the Supreme Court hears. Let me back up. But whenever it's like, okay, district judge said this, appeals court said this, then the Supreme Court disagrees, that's how that always works. It just gets set back down. So the fact that it's GVR'd and set back down to the lower court, that does not mean that like we have a second chance of that lower court getting it right again. No, they're called inferior courts. And the Supreme Court, when they give them their marching orders and tell them how they have to rule, they have to. Now, leftist activist judges will completely ignore the Supreme Court whenever they want, but typically conservative judges do follow the Supreme Court when something's remanded back down. Does that make sense? So yeah, let me know. Some of you might think she needs a little more time. I'm not sure. What's happening, Kevin James? You're welcome, man. All right. Let me go through some of these super chats here, which I really appreciate. And then I'm going to get into a little bit of this Michigan stuff for just a second. Which I am going to do a standalone video on the Michigan stuff because I wasn't trying to bury it an hour and a half in. It's just, lots of stuff going on. So I'm actually going to give you guys just a little bit of the Michigan. Then I will do a standalone video, which doesn't really matter that I'm saying that right now as much as because the people that only like to watch a video rather than a live stream replay, they're not watching anymore, which is totally fine with me. I just don't like people to whine. That's the only distinction I was making. All right. John Q. Public with another super chat. Well, thank you, sir. I appreciate it. He says, also, Trump plans on making D.C. a shall issue for carry permits under Section 5 of that order, plus North Carolina to become the 33rd constitutional permitless carry state. When for Michigan? Okay. North Carolina. Shout out, man. Michigan constitutional carry, that's a long ways away. But hopefully not. Hopefully not. I'm not sure. Maybe it's not a long ways away, but, well, here's the deal. Elections are coming up here in a year and a half again, right? A year and a half. Michigan has to retain control of the House, but also it has to be in control of not just Republicans, because I can't stand this two-party system. I'm so sick of it. I'm thinking us versus them. It's them and them versus us is what it really is. Think about it. See, here's the problem. And this isn't why this isn't a particularly political channel. See, a lot of people conflate the two. This is a Second Amendment channel. I'm like a Second Amendment absolutist. There tends to be more Second Amendment friendly people that take up with the Republicans. Totally. All right. Like, I get that, obviously, because there's like no pro Second Amendment Democrats in any type of office, anyways. Not any office on the state or federal level, at least not in Michigan. There's not. So, with that said, people mistake it. It's like, well, hold on a minute. No, I'm not all about like this one versus that one and our side versus their side. Look, Second Amendment, period. That's my issue here when it comes to all of this. And yes, there's politicians that are involved constantly going against the Second Amendment, defending the Second Amendment, maybe repealing, maybe passing more. Good Supreme Court cases, bad Supreme Court cases, all of this. But the problem is you've got the Democrats going after the Second Amendment all of the time, and then you have Republicans, some Republicans going against the Second Amendment. That's what sucks. That's why I don't like this two-party system. I don't. It's basically like all of this side is against us, some of this side's against us, some of this side's for us. But so when I say we, I mean Second Amendment supporting. I guess it's going to have to be Republicans because that's the only place you can even find one Second Amendment supporter anymore. And there's only two parties that can actually have majority. So it doesn't even, so yeah, guys, look, shout out to all the libertarians. Look, I don't actually agree with the Libertarian Party. That's why I'm not one, but no, like shout out, because a lot of my friends are like libertarians and we think so much alike when it comes to certain things. Other things we don't, but with the Second Amendment, we do, right? Love my libertarian friends on the Second Amendment, and we see eye to eye, obviously. But here's the deal. The Libertarian Party ain't going to be able to just gain control next year of the Michigan House of Representatives or Senate. It's just not set up that way. And I want you all to know this one more time. I reject the two-party system, and I actually can't stand it. So with that said, pro-Second Amendment Republicans will have to retain control of the Michigan House of Representatives. The Michigan Democrat-controlled Senate will have to be flipped by a majority of not just Republicans, because that's not enough, pro-Second Amendment Republicans. Now, both of those chambers flipping Republican, they'd have to be the majority pro-2A, and they actually have to have some wherewithal and know what's going on. And then they have to have some fortitude and be willing to actually push through the stuff that they promised. That's another challenge. And then the governorship would have to be taken over by a pro-Second Amendment governor. And it probably is going to have to end up being a Republican, but just because they're Republican does not mean that they're pro-Second Amendment. And then they have to have the fortitude to actually sign said bill into law if it passes through both houses of the Michigan legislature. I hope so. I'm doing more activism and trying to spread the good word on the Second Amendment, why it matters for state elections. I think I'm doing it as much as anybody is, probably more than anybody. So we will see. John Q. Public, yet again. Thank you for another super chat. Says Dexter Taylor is doing 10 years in New York for so-called ghost guns. Yeah, I know. And that is a travesty. That's really bad. Thank you. John Q. Public, yet again. I appreciate it. Says another super chat. Says this country has a history of manufacturing your own arms for self-defense and personal protection. Yes. Yes, exactly. I completely agree. John Q. Public with yet another super chat. Thank you, John Q. Public. Tonight's sponsors are Robin Sage and John Q. Public. Appreciate it, guys. Says, and a channel member, says Jasmine Crockett recently said in HR 38 committee, what part of well-regulated is misunderstood? She thinks that means the government makes laws about the militia instead of it meaning well-equipped. Yeah, and this is something like to believe her requires a listener to be dumber than the speaker. In my opinion, this is not a very smart person. And yeah, you're right. That's been the leftist argument for a long time. And this is not a person that I agree with and wouldn't trust anything she says. But thanks for bringing that up. And John Q. Public, one more time with another super chat. Well, thanks, man. Says, how come your vehicle is not considered an extension of your home or business for the purposes of open holstered carry here in Michigan, as in other states? I know, Michigan, other states, it is an extension of your home. It's very true. Michigan's had draconian gun control laws. They started piling them on in 1927 For 100 years, Michigan has had some of the worst gun control. See, here's what's so weird about Michigan, right? Like, okay, so Trump wins Michigan 2 times. A lot of people say he won it 3 times. I get it, but actually, like, according to the Electoral College maps, Trump wins it 2 times. And then like, so there's certain things that make you think, okay, Michigan might be a conservative state. And then the Michigan House and Senate for like 40 years were majority Republican. But then, like, we've had Republican and Democrat governors on and off over the last few decades, but more Democrat governors than Republicans. But even a lot of the Republicans have not been very pro-Second Amendment. Michigan's a weird state to explain, but I think, and I've lived here a long time, and trust me, guys, I know many people in Michigan. I know more people in Michigan than almost anyone because of this channel and just people I know. I own a small business. Awesome people. There's awesome people in this state. Lots of them. And a lot of you watching right now are those same people. Michigan is a pretty liberal state, though, at the end of the day. I know a lot of you are saying, hold on, 2A EDU, it's not. I get it, man. Like, where you live and your friends and stuff, I know. But man, Michigan's a really, it's hard to explain. There's a lot of stuff in this state that just makes you roll your eyes and shake your head. I'll just say that. A lot of very, very dumb people live in this state. And I'm not talking about people that watch this show. I mean, maybe there's like one dumb person that watches this show every once in a while, but no, you know what I mean. This is just one of those states where, yeah. I'm going to go over here and take a peek at the chat and see what my Michigan viewers are talking about. You guys know what I mean, though, if you've lived in this state. It's like, a lot of people say Michigan's conservative. It's like, I don't know about that. MC Joe says, I can hear you. Well, good. Yeah, Michigan's been, Jane Locke, she gets it. She says, Michigan has had rhino control for 40 years, then left-hard control. There you go. You know what's going on, Jane. And it's so frustrating, too, though, because there's so many good people in this state. But, man, there's a lot of people. What's up, Vince? How you doing, man? Vince Metzger's in the house tonight. Too many choices. What's up? G23, there he is. What's happening, dude? What's up, Derek? All right, so here's the deal. I'm going to go over this real quick here, and if you guys have any questions, start typing them in the chat. We did get over 5 super chats, so I am going to do a little courtesy Q&A for whoever. So this is for Gretchen Whitmer's proposed budget. They go by the fiscal year. It doesn't start in January like you think it does. This would start, the fiscal year starts in October. Okay, so she's trying to raise a whole bunch of money. I'm just giving you the real quick and dirty version. I'll go into this further in a standalone video. Higher license fees in the Department of Natural Resources are the third biggest item at $28.9 million, with $22 million of that coming from higher hunting and fishing fees, and $6.9 million coming from higher watercraft fees. Wow. Whitmer's proposal would increase the base fee for small game hunting. Now think about these percentage-wise. These are going to be huge percentages. The base fee for small game hunting from $11 to $17 for resident adults. From $6 to $10. Again, these are almost doubling. From $6 to $10 for resident minors. And from $151 to $165 for non-residents. So wait a minute now. She only bumps it up 10% for non-residents in Michigan. By the way, shout out to all of the non-residents in Michigan. Many of you live in much more 2A loving states. So like, shout out to all of you. Like, you know, like seriously, man. I traveled across this country and met so many awesome people. Shout out to all my southern friends that are watching. You guys are sitting there being like, what? Of course you can carry in your car. Yeah, I know. But not in Michigan, you can't. Ask John Q. Public about that. So look, but let's just go back. This is the state budget. Just calling a spade a spade. Shout out to all the people that don't live in Michigan. But hold on, this is our state, as crappy as it is in many ways. So they're raising fees 50% for resident adults and almost 100% for resident minors, but they're only going to raise it 10% for non-resident. You know what I just noticed here? Not only does she hate the people in her own state, just think about this. She only raises it 10% for non-residents, 100% and 50% on these two categories. Wow, this is all across the board. All of these. The non-resident just barely goes up, and the resident, she's just pounding it. Dude, she's trying to kill hunting and fishing in Michigan. Now, hold on. Listen to everything I'm going to say very carefully, because if you only listen to half, you're going to get real mad at me. And one or two people are going to get mad at me even if they listen to all this. Don't forget to hit the thumbs up button if you do like the channel and like the stream. There's one thing I kind of like about this, actually. Like in that kind of way, right? This is finally affecting the FUDs. Because here's the thing. Now, look, I don't like any of this at all. I just want to be honest. I don't. But that notwithstanding, I don't like this even one bit. But in the alternative, I do like a little bit, I think. Maybe a little bit. Because you know what people have said in this state for so long? Because here's the problem. You've got a Second Amendment supporter, which there is no like milquetoast because it says shall not be infringed. You either believe shall not be infringed and you're with the Second Amendment. And if you believe anything other than that, and there's any but or comma or whatever, then you're just not a Second Amendment supporter. Because the Second Amendment is just so stark, you either are or you aren't. That's how I look at it. Well, here's the thing. There's the anti-gunner. That's bad. The anti-Second Amendment crowd. That's terrible. But even worse than that is the FUD. It's like, well, hold on a minute. I support the Second Amendment, but I support the Second Amendment, but all you need to hunt deer is a 12-gauge shotgun. And look, 12-gauge shotguns are awesome. I own many, actually. All you need to shoot skeet is a shotgun. If you can't get it done in 5 shots, you need to be better aim. And look, it goes on and on. Now, some of these are talking points that go back and forth, but between the anti-gun and the FUD, because that's when you really think about it, the FUD is actually more antithetical to the Second Amendment than the actual one that just says they want to ban them all. Because here's why. They come in and say we want to ban them all. Then people wake up and they're like, whoa, we can't let them ban everything. And then the Republicans to get votes, or some of them that are good Second Amendment supporting Republicans, they'll fight back. But these FUDs are just like this nasty little infestation that are like, well, the Second Amendment's all about hunting, and it's all about hunting, and it's all about hunting. And look, hunting is awesome. Like tons of hunters are like super duper Second Amendment supporters. Make no mistake. Many Second Amendment supporters are hunters. But all hunters are not Second Amendment supporters and never have been and never will be. Now it's finally starting to affect the hunters. So I hate all of this. But insofar as that, you know what? No, I don't want this to affect the Second Amendment supporting hunters. So again, I think this all needs crumpled up, and hopefully the Republicans can stop this. All right. But I think some of you knew what I meant, right? You know what I mean? Well, it's just about hunting. No, these are two different topics. And of course, you also have the right to hunt too. But remember, the Second Amendment protects all of it. All right, so it's a combination hunting and fishing license would increase from $76 to $115 for residents. Wow, that's almost double again. Wow. And from $266 to $275 for non-residents. So non-resident just barely went up. Not even 10% in this case. It went up like 3%. But it went up like 66% for residents. Dude, that's a big deal. From $76 to $115. You know what I mean? Yeah, Harry Grimley. What's up, Harry? Yeah, it is going to be. It is going to be a rich man sport. Well, hold on, Horsepower Greed. What's happening, man? Nice to see you, by the way. If this is what it takes to wake the fuzz up, then so be it. No, I hope so, actually. That's why I'm kind of calling the fuzz out right now. Dude, hopefully it wakes some of them up and they come over to our side, right? Now, some of the fuzz might go over to the other side, too. But no, man, no. That's why I was getting a little sarcastic. You nailed it, Horsepower Greed. That's why I was getting a little sarcastic. I'm like, wait a minute, fuzz. It's affecting you now. Hmm? The cost of a base license, hunting license for seniors, would more than double from $5 to $13. Wow. What's up, Sean Zimmerman? Yeah, it's been way more expensive than it should have been. Yeah, it keeps going up. Okay, yeah, I'll go through a couple more. For adult residents, the fee for wild turkey hunting. Has anyone ever heard of wild turkey? Like, oh, that's different wild turkey. All right. Wild turkey hunting license. What if they increase people's booze by this much all at once? What would they do? Shout out to my friends who like to have a few. I'm just saying, you know. For adult residents, the fee for a wild turkey hunting license would increase from $15 to $23. Oh, geez, that's 50% price increase on turkey. The fee for waterfowl. Oh, wait a minute. 50% again from $12 to $18. The fee for a pheasant hunting license from $25 to $38. The fee for a deer hunting license from $20 to $30. That's up 50%. Bear. Yeah, bear over 50% from $25 to $38. The fee for elk from $100 to $150. And seniors, the cost of a deer license. Wow. Listen to this. Look at this. Senior citizen deer license from $8 to $23. That's 300% increase. Yeah, jive turkey. MC Joe says, well, I'm just saying. You guys heard of wild turkey, though, right? It says wild turkey on here. I'm like, for my friends that have a few, I mean, look, here's the crazy part. Someone just mentioned Backy. Yeah, see, right here, Sean Zimmerman. Dude, he says, don't be messing with people's backer. Well, hold on a minute. That's the other whole big part of this article that doesn't concern hunting is they're going after that like crazy, including vape. So there you go. There you go, man. I mean, everything with the ATF, think about it. The firearms, the alcohol, and the tobacco, they are actually going after all this. All right. Now here's the crazy part. Some people might be thinking to themselves, dude, it's only $20 up to $30. It's only from $15 up to 23. Well, for some of them, it's like from 100 to 100. But look how many licenses. And this isn't even a complete list, all right? Look at all these licenses you have to have to fish. I mean, the hunt, this hunting, we haven't even gotten into fishing yet. Like, you got to have some coin. Think about this. Especially when she's done with this budget. If you drink, if you smoke, if you chew, get ready to pony up. If you drink, get ready to pony up. If you like to ride on a boat, pony up. If you like to hunt, pony up, fish. I mean, this is going to be hitting a lot of people many, many different ways. For an all-species fishing license, the budget would increase the fee from $26 to $40. Dude, that's a 50% increase. And from $76 to $90 for non-residents. And I would note yet again, she's raising up the resident fee way higher proportion than she is non-resident. Thus, again, proving she hates the people that live in this state. She literally does. She hates the people that live in this state. And she's the governor of Michigan. The cost for seniors, oh my gosh. Dude, didn't they triple the seniors? Hold on a minute. What's up, Christy Turtel? Nice to see you. I have to text you, Christy. I've been working till after dark like the last 2 days in a row, and I did not want to try to text or call you after 9:30 at night. But we need to talk soon. Christy was texting me about and sent me an email about a topic that sounds pretty interesting. So I've just been working till after dark too much. Now look, so wait a minute. The seniors, they tripled the senior citizen. Yeah. The cost of a senior citizen deer license from 8 to 23. That's triple. Dude, they're triple on the seniors fishing license too. From $11 to $30. Wow. I mean, boats. Yeah, they're going after boats. Like a lot. See, the cost of a DNR recreation passport for, now listen to this. This is interesting. I knew about this for a while. The cost of a DNR recreation passport for entrance to state parks would hold steady at $14, but here's the but. But instead, man, I did some wild turkey to wet my throat. Jeez, oh Pete's. Man, we do need to have one of those bonfires. I don't even drink, guys, and actually, like the sound of hard liquor sounds repulsive to me, but I need someone to come in with some wild turkey. I'm losing my voice. All right. But instead of opting in, when they renew their license tabs, Michigan residents would be charged the fee unless they opt out. I'm like, Christy's got a message for all of you. Hold on a minute. Yeah, it might be a good thing if it can run the Dems out of Michigan. You're right. Wait, let's read what Christy's saying here. What's happening, Christy? Oh, man. Let's see here. Wait, she says happy Friday. Hold on. I've been pulling a lot of all-nighters too. Okay. Well, you know, Doge is coming to a state near every single one of you all watching soon. Well, wow. And Christy is a busy woman. I've met her just like online, like on this channel, actually, her coming in the chat, but I've seen her in real life in Tennessee. I've seen her in real life in Georgia. So I can tell you she's out there fighting the good fight, getting around all over the place, north, south, whatever. It's a rat race, isn't it? All right. So hold on a minute. So basically they're going to start making it where you will get a recreational passport with your license tabs no matter what. You just have to come back and tell them no. Okay. MC Joe's excited, Christy. But look, like so right now you have to check, yes, I want the recreation passport. But they're going to raise a bunch of funds. It's supposed to generate an extra 17.2 million. Now here's the problem with that though. Hold on a minute. It's not that I don't support my parks and my whatever, but here's the thing, man. I got to support myself in times like this too, keep in mind. This is a governor that made it illegal to cut grass a couple years back. Still haven't recovered since. I mean, this state economically has been going to hell. Still haven't recovered since. But look, I have work trucks that go to a job site. They come back to my shop and sit here. Many people have this. That you'll never take to a state park in a million years. Some of them you can't even really get them into the state park because they're so big and whatnot. That's a bunch of crap that unless you have to take the time for each of your vehicles, go in there and purposely opt out of a state park pass. If you're never going to use the state park, then you shouldn't have to pay for the pass. I'm sorry. Now, I get it. Can't we all? Yeah, we chip in for all kinds of stuff. We're literally already taxed to no end. There's 15 other ways they're taxing you that's already supposed to be funding all of the DNR and the parks and recreations and all this. Just remember, the lotto was supposed to fund the schools in this state. So here's my point. A certain amount of all of our taxes go to fund all this anyways, trust me. And taxation's theft, because when they steal from you and give it to other people, that's literally what that is. We call it theft if it's any other way, but since it's taxes, people say, okay, then it's okay. But look, here's the problem. Say you have a personal car and then a big old work truck. And maybe you do love to go to the state park, so you buy a state park pass for your car, but not your work truck because it only goes to customers' job sites, right? So you drive your truck back, park it at the shop, get in your car, drive to the state park. Well, that's cool. You paid for your state park sticker on your car. Why would you pay for a state park sticker on your work truck that's never going to go to the parks? I don't know. Does anyone else have an issue with that? Because I do. All right. Yeah, Vince, in Michigan, for example, oh, geez, they are being so wasteful with our money for gun control. Yeah, gun control. Yeah, Doge getting involved is a lot of the stuff here, Vince, when it comes to gun control, that could fit in if there was a Michigan version of Doge. Because here's the problem: they're running this big scam with these universal licensing. You have to go get purchase permits, and a lot of these are charging for them. A lot of these local police, and it's a big money racket for the government that should not be. There should not be a poll tax. Everybody says there shouldn't be a tax on all this money they're raking in for CPLs in Michigan. All these things. Now, in your state, it may vary exactly what they're charging fees for, but yeah, I believe that gun control is a huge waste of our money, Vince. And I know you were responding back to someone else. So I don't know the rest of the context, but just reading what you just said there, yeah. Gun control is a huge government efficiency and an extortion and waste of money that, in my opinion, goes to many special interests. All right, did you guys have any questions? We're going to jump off here in just a minute. Let me look here and see here. So I don't know the internal workings of Doge, but I hope they are working on stuff that has to do with gun control like crazy. Because there is a lot of that. A lot of money involved in the gun control industry. Okay, what's up, Bill Alexander? I'm looking to see if anyone had any questions up here. All right. You guys are talking about a little hunting. All right. Cool. Well, hope we had a good discussion tonight. I hope you guys enjoyed the stream, or at least you had some things to think about. I'm going to read a couple super chats here on the way out. And then, like I said, I'll answer free questions too. We did meet our super chat goal. So I will take one last look at the regular chat after I thank another channel sponsor, Rescue Nut. Thank you for the super chat. And for the and for being a channel member. I appreciate it. It says coffee on me, brother. Well, thank you. That's good. Now I guess I won't have to go get me some wild turkey. I was talking about the wild turkey, and they're going after the booze and the backy and and the boats and the hunting and the fishing, and it's just every single part of the ATF back at you again. But no, now I can have me some nice coffee in the morning. Thank you, man. I appreciate it. John Q. Public, yet again. Well, thank you, man. A VIP supporter tonight with another super chat. It says, Indiana and Ohio residents don't need carry permits in Michigan. Huh. But Michigan people sure do if they're going to conceal carry. Just so you guys know, you might say it's open carry because you're wearing it on a belt on your holster. You might say it's open carry because you have it in the front seat. That's in your vehicle in Michigan. Yeah, that's considered concealed. Even if it's open within the vehicle. A motor vehicle is absolutely not considered an extension of your own home in the state of Michigan. And you could be lawfully carrying on your hip and just pass this invisible line and go and sit in your vehicle, even if it's in plain view, and instantly criminalized. You could be instantly criminalized. Yeah, man. All right, let's see here. Thank you for sharing. Well, you're welcome. You're welcome. I'm glad you liked the stream tonight. Base Haxor. Let's see what else we have here. What events am I attending? I wanted to go down to South Carolina last week. Didn't have the money, so I didn't go. Channel didn't have the money, but that's because I've been putting a lot of money into my fight in Michigan here. So we'll see. I wanted to go to the PSA The Gathering event. Let me know if any of you guys made it there, by the way. Tell me how it was. I'd like to go to GOA goals. I'd like to go to the IV event in the fall that I saw you at last year, Christy. Yeah, it's just hard, man. I don't do the whole corporate sponsor, thing like the ad reads and all that. So that's kind of yeah. I'll go to what I can though, and hopefully I will see you somewhere soon. Good night, Gort. Take it easy. All right. Well, I don't see any necessarily questions at the end, but that's all good. Maybe you guys will throw them in the chat afterwards, and I will try to answer them. Yeah, only so many hours in the day. I agree. Yeah, a lot of stolen tax money goes into gun control. I agree, Joe. Yes, sir. Well, yeah, G23. That's what I was saying, man. I mean, look. Yeah, I'm going to do a little standalone video because the people in Michigan will probably want to know about this. I know a lot of you that don't live in Michigan just probably want to keep tabs too. I'm like, man, who do I want to talk about? The governor of Michigan? I mean, I don't know. Oh, one more quick thing. Senate Bill 111 in Michigan. When they come back from their break, there's likely to be a vote in the Senate. Call your Michigan senators and tell them no on the Michigan new red flag law. This is another red flag law where old people can red flag you. Potentially for just owning a firearm would be enough. You also call your Michigan representative as well, because if this passes the Senate, but there's a good chance it will on party lines, but hopefully not if enough of you call. And then we have to make sure the Michigan House does not take it up and pass it. So you really want to be calling your Michigan representative, Michigan House of Representatives, about Senate Bill 111. Because when they come back from their break, we can see this stuff getting voted on very soon. Hey, Lyle Smith, I do have a Blackout Coffee link right down there in the description. None of my viewers have used it in a very long time. It's probably been 3 months, but I do have a coupon code that will get you 20% off your first purchase. And if you just use my link when you're making your normal Blackout Coffee purchases, there's a link right down there in the description. And that way you guys can be a financial sponsor with no money out of your pocket if you're already shopping there anyways. So there you go. Yeah, Senate Bill 111 is completely insane. Michigan Senate Bill 111. It's a red flag bill that's completely out of your mind. It's nuts. And yeah, if it passes the Senate on party lines, it will be going to the House. Where, look, every time Democrats vote for gun control, and typically Republicans don't, but Republicans vote for gun control in Michigan too. You know what I mean? We had bipartisan gun control that passed in Michigan 2 years ago. So that's why you call your Michigan representatives as well. It's called Senate Bill 111, 111. Yeah. So yeah, use my links. Like I said, there's links down there in the description. Over on Locals, I share awesome deals where you guys can be sponsors of the channel for no extra money out of your pocket as well on different stuff that I don't post here on YouTube. You're welcome, Christy. Yeah, it's behind the scenes stuff, isn't it? She says, thank you for taking the time out of your busy day to educate us. For the shared fellowship, we all sincerely appreciate all your hard work and dedication, especially behind the scenes. Well, hey, man, I appreciate all of you guys, you, Christy, and everybody else that's fighting the good fight, because a lot of it is behind the scenes and people don't really see that stuff too much. So, yeah. All right, well, I'm going to jump off and go grab some food and then hopefully get to bed as well. But before I do, what's up, Laurie DeVries? Nice to see you. I haven't seen you in a while, Laurie, while I'm live. So thank you. Thanks for hanging out tonight. I hope you're doing good. What's up, Mike McClune? Man, I'm just getting ready to get off here. Two Talls Ale. What's happening, man? Yeah. Jane, you doing all right? Yeah, look at the price of coffee. I know. It's gone up like crazy. Yeah, you're welcome, Base. Good night, X Plans. Yeah, man. Good night, Kevin James. John Q Public. Thanks again, man. I appreciate it. Yeah. Oh, well, you won't be able to go to. This is the deal. You can't afford to go buy groceries, as you guys are just talking about. And you soon, if Whitmer gets her way, you will not be able to afford to hunt or fish for your food either. Good night, MC Cho. And good night, Richard Denny. All right. I'll see you all again soon, hopefully tomorrow night over on Locals and Rumble. And meantime, check out my Locals community for more posts. Good night, TJP. All right, guys. Thanks for watching and have a good one.